Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Marvels podcast. This is your host, Kevin Hines, and we are about to talk to a wonderful human being named Jill Garapino, an amazing, gifted, kind individual with a powerful story of how to help people find recovery after pain. Jill tragically lost her son to suicide, a veteran in this community, and a very important human being himself. And we're so sad for his loss. We're so grateful that Jill is now working through her organization, Aftermath of Suicide, to help save and change lives moving forward. Let me welcome Jill. How are you, Jill? Oh, no, I can't hear you. Shoot. Hold on. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Jill. These technical difficulties in the age of coronavirus and the age of Zoom calls.
That's okay. Actually,
Okay.
My husband doesn't want to hear me, so he would have liked that.
Oh my goodness. Well, Jill, it's so wonderful to have you on today. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I would love to just start by going through your story. What led you to create Aftermath of Suicide, and what led you down this path of I would call it from pain to hope, really.
Yes.
Can you tell us your story?
December 27th of 2014, I received a text from my son saying that I'm going out to visit Pop, but I'm not coming back. And he went on to say, we gave him a great life and all these things. So I panicked because my son had never threatened to take his life. Nor has he ever tried. And yet he did battle his up and down depression for years, but that just came out of, like, it backhanded me. And it was Christmas week. I mean, we just celebrated. It's like, wait a minute. So we all just scrambled. Everybody that in my family started calling the Boulder City, Nevada Memorial Cemetery for the veterans. That's where my dad is buried. And when my ex-husband, Mike's dad, got to the cemetery, there was yellow tape everywhere and cops, and he knew it was. So I'm just waiting to hopefully we found Mike alive somewhere. And when he called me, I just screamed. I just fell to the ground and just, so, that's where it started.
That's where it started.
My son and I were extremely close, and two peas in a pod, really. And he was very much a homebody, but he was a true soldier inside and out, and he would do anything for you. He was funny, theatrical, intense. He was the go-to person for all his friends, and it was a huge loss. When you have someone larger than life that's gone, you really feel it. And so I went from there into a spiral of a deep, dark depression. Within 9 months, this is everything that happened to me. Mike took his life. 6 months later, my then husband left me by a text message. I had a breakdown. I was put in a 72-hour watch, and I knew I needed to get out of there, and I didn't belong there. Another story with that, they ask if you have a gun, do you have pills? Just from that, I said yes. They, put me there. And I needed to get out because I had to move the next day after I got out of there, out of my home. I moved in with my sister, brother-in-law, my mom lived there, my nephew, and my two dogs. And I can tell you, at 57, 8 years old, I was living out of a suitcase in my car. I had to go out and get clothes because there was no room for all my stuff in her house. And I just felt so lonely. I mean, we couldn't even go to each other for help because we were all grieving for the loss of Mike.
Yeah.
And for 2 years, I had passive suicidal ideation. I mean, I was bad. I begged God not to wake me. Every time I woke up, I was so sad that I was still alive. My daughter was in California in college, so I didn't see her enough for it to register that I had a daughter. I was so out of it, so deep in a depression of losing so much. And 2 months after I got out of the 72-hour watch, I had to have a full hip replacement.
Wow.
So all of that in 9 months, it was a lot to grieve. And I grieved my old life. The old me died with Mike. And, for the first 2 years, I was bad. I was really bad, but I knew I had to be proactive and search and find people to help me, because no one knew how to help me. I mean, I was truly on my own. Nobody in my circle understood it, had been through it, lost a child. And my family too, my sister and her, I mean, they were a little bit, nobody wanted to deal with me, right? Because I had depression. I was suicidal passively, so sometimes people just, I don't want to deal with that. And I felt so abandoned from my family that, I mean, I was really alone, and I didn't want to burden my daughter by calling her with my problems. So I became proactive. I knew that I could either succumb to a life and kill myself, or I could maybe make a difference. And so I started my website, aftermathofsuicide.com, my Facebook page, which is Aftermath of Suicide. So I could just tell my story. And I searched online for support groups. And I actually found more help from strangers than I did from people I knew. It's amazing. And I met a lot of great people, but I have to tell you, you sure see the true colors in people, good and bad, when something like this happens. And I have few people in my life, but they're the ones that I've chosen to be there.
Almost your chosen family after what you went through.
Yes. Yeah. And when you lose a child, and especially as close as Mike, and I mean, he was my comedy partner, my fine dining partner. We did everything. He was a movie buff, and he was somewhat OCD. Everything was organized, and I'm clean, but not to that degree. All his CDs were alphabetical, all his movies, and he had 2,000. So
oh, wow.
I just, I lost, I lost my only son, and I lost Mike, and Mike was huge. Yeah, it was over 300 people at his memorial, and I couldn't leave it. I thought, I don't even know that many people. They just all came, and it was lines out the door and standing room only. And, Mike was a veteran, chaplain assistant. He had a lot of compounded grief that he never dealt with. And I urge people, please don't keep pushing that down, because then another thing happens and another thing happens. Yeah. And, Mike had a breakup. My dad died when Mike was flying home from Iraq, the first deployment.
And he had two deployments to Iraq, right?
Right. I had to greet my son to tell him that Pop died. On top of that, I was grieving my dad dying. So it was a terrible dichotomy. I feel to this day terrible that I still had to tell him that, even though he didn't blame me, obviously. But the sobs that I heard from him still ring out in my mind, in my ears. I hear it. And so that was part of his downfall. There it started. Yeah. And the breakup, and then his chaplain took his life 11 months before
Mike's chaplain took his life 11 months before Mike did.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that was it.
That must have played a huge role.
That was, yeah, they were best friends, and no one saw that coming either. And Mike's thinking, wait a minute, we helped soldiers to stay alive. That's what you did, chaplain.
Yeah.
How could you take your life?
Yeah. So
it almost, I felt like, gave Mike permission to just do it too.
Well, what we know about suicide is that it isn't necessarily contagious, but when someone you care about dies by suicide, this happens in high schools all the time.
Yeah.
It gives kids the option. They go, oh, this is an option. This is a way out, and it certainly implants in their brains. There's no telling how that would have affected Mike, but it probably had that effect on him. And that's not that chaplain's fault, but certainly his situation had a role to play in Mike's Mike's attempt and then death by
Absolutely.
suicide. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember where I was. I was driving to the store. Mike calls me sobbing. Chaplin took his life. I turned right around and went home. And Mike was just on the floor. And I didn't even know what to do for him. And his parents, Chaplin's mom to this day is not well. She never got over it.
So
And he
sad.
took his life at a cemetery where he was stationed. I think it was Missouri or Kansas. But it was interesting that my son took his life by my dad, which is he, like I said, he never got over that my dad died before Mike got to see him.
Was he really close to his grandfather?
Oh, extremely,
Yeah.
extremely. I mean, he pretty much raised him, I mean, because my husband at that time, Nicole's dad, uh, adopted Mike at 7. And so really my dad was the father figure. And my dad was a wonderful father, great grandfather, and he always, took care of the kids and made sure that they never came home alone. And, idle time is the devil's playground, he used to say.
Right. Right.
And so he wanted to make sure that, Mike didn't go off and, because that teenage years, they start to get in trouble. And Mike did, but nothing major. So, I saw the depression, but I really never thought suicide. And so, with that said, I created the site, and what I wanted to do was really help people and go online and tell my story. I laid it out there. I didn't leave anything out. I'm not ashamed of it. I was hoping that something I said could help someone else. And and it did. I mean, people would reach out privately and say, after I read how it destroyed your son's suicide, destroyed you, and I never want to do that to my mom.
Oh,
So I went
wow.
and got help, and
Oh,
I
wow.
was so thankful. It's like that's why I do this,
Yes.
and it's a whole different world now that I've entered into because I'm in a club that no one wants to be in that has children. And I'm in another world of mental illness because I suffered with major depression disorder, PTSD, and panic attacks. I still am in therapy today and I take medication, and I thank God for it because I was desperate. I needed help, and I knew it, and I was proactive. And you need to be proactive because no one's going to take your hand and they don't even know what to do. They don't even know what to say. Everybody means well. Mike wouldn't want you to live like this or be like this. And I used to say, really? Well, then he shouldn't have taken his life. And I'd get angry.
Yeah.
He wouldn't want me to live this way. So, I really knew that different community, I call it, of mental illness. And wow, I mean, it was an eye opener being in that 72-hour watch. But I knew that I had to share my story and hope that parents that have lost a child could understand what they need to do to help themselves. Also, the 7 stages of grief, which you can Google online, but that is imperative to do that. I mean, my therapist told me if you don't do the 7 stages, Jill, it's going to hit you years down the road,
Yeah.
and it's going to be worse if you don't deal with the grief now.
What are 1 or 2 of those stages? Can you describe them for me?
Well, the first one is shock, and most people are in shock for the first year, and that's normal. And then the second year, the fog starts to lift, and here's reality. And then it hits you like a ton of bricks, depending on your relationship with your loved one. But, and then there's denial that it didn't really happen, that they're still alive somewhere. And I did that. Now Mike's in his apartment. He didn't really take his life. And then it hit me and I'd fall to the ground and sob. And, there's anger. My family was angry. I was never angry at Mike. I think as a mom, I felt so sad that my son had to take his life to be happy. And that's really a hard pill to swallow when you're so close and you think you're doing all you can. And of course, now as suicides leave you with all the ifs, should haves, could haves. Why didn't I call? I should have called him. And that just goes over in your mind till you go crazy and you start to learn that you can't do that. You may never have the answers. Luckily, we did get a text from Mike. Many people get nothing.
Right. Only 20% of civilians who die by suicide actually leave a note. So
right.
And it's even less in the military, and he was a veteran. So
absolutely. And the last stage is acceptance, and I'm not even there. I am not at a place that I accept that my son took his life or felt that was his only way out. When I think about my son took his life, I just shake my head and I say, really, Mike? Really? I still am.
You talk to him today, don't you?
All the time.
Yeah. Can you describe what that's like, and if is that a cathartic piece for you? I mean, how does it help, or how does it even, is it a detriment to do that?
Yeah. Basically, I always ask Mike to sort of give me a sign that, you hear me. Are you happy, Mike? Was it worth it? Show me a sign, and in the beginning, I did hear from Mike a little bit. I don't anymore. Maybe sometimes, I'll just be sitting there and out of nowhere, a song that Mike liked came on. Metallica was his favorite band. And how often do you hear them? And I thought, how weird is that? So, but I do talk to him. And now I'm angry after 5.5 years. So those 7 stages, you could go through 1 stage and go to 3 and back to 1. And, it could take years, and there's no right or wrong, which one you do and how long you stay in that. And never let anybody tell you you should be over this by now.
I'm a big proponent of that. Never let anybody tell you how you should grieve.
Absolutely.
People grieve the way they need to, and far too much in America, we look at people and we say, whether it's suicide or a death by a heart attack or liver or heart or lung disease, and we say, oh, it's been 2 years, Jane, or it's been 2 years, Jill. It's been 7 years, Jill. Anybody tells you how to grieve, you tell them that Kevin Hines said to sit down, because nobody gets to tell you how you grieve someone you loved unconditionally. Nobody. And I think if we're going to leave the viewers here today with a really important message, it's that if you've lost someone to suicide, take it upon yourself to grieve however you need to, as long as you need to, or indefinitely if that's the case. But I would suggest to you this. Jill, I'm the kind of person that does not believe that you can move on from a suicide. I don't believe you can do it. I don't believe it's possible. I think you can look to the living, those who still remain here, your husband, your now husband, your family, your friends, the people you made your family, and you can move forward through the pain one step at a time. I don't think you can move on. I think you can move forward, and it's however long that takes you, that's how long it takes you, and that is your prerogative.
Yes, I agree, and I write that in my book. But it's exactly that way. And when people say, okay, finally get closure, I don't know what that means. Mm. Closure, how do you find closure in losing a child? Just because they're buried? It doesn't even, that's when the grieving starts. It's just the beginning, not because they're buried now, funeral's over, it's over. And people think that it's over. Now Jill could move on with her life, and no, it's just the beginning.
Just beginning, and because of how much you loved him, it's eternal. It's forever.
It's just the triggers were everywhere, you know, and it could be anything that you did with that loved one, or you watched with them on TV, or, you know, just anything. And to this day, I have one picture of my son up. I still cannot look right in his face.
Oh.
I can't. I had to take things down. And then at Christmas, it took me 3 years to put up a tree. Every Christmas, as you know, Mike took his life 2 days later. So there's always that black cloud hanging there that sort of ruins the merry part of Christmas. You know, I know that's coming.
It's fascinating you bring that up, because it's my understanding my mom's, I think it was my mom's mother's father, so her great grandfather, who died potentially by suicide, Christmas Eve, or no, my mom's father's father, and he hated Christmas for that, hated it, and it's understandable. Yeah. It's completely understandable.
No time is a good time ever.
Well, right, exactly.
You know,
how do you?
When it's around a holiday, it ruins that holiday. It does. And so Mike's birthday is November, and so from that start on, I have to go through the birthday, and that's not happy for me, because I think back to when I gave birth to him and it was happy, and now my son's gone. And so there's the birthday, and then there's Christmas, and then there's the anniversary of Mike's suicide. It's those like 6 weeks, I just am a basket case.
It's overwhelming.
And I relive everything on that time over and over every year.
Have you ever considered, and I've worked with families to do this, and I don't know if this is something that would be, that would work for you, but I'm going to throw it out there. Have you ever considered, and maybe you're already doing this, but celebrating his birthday with like a cake and a candle and people that loved him just as much as you do, and doing it while remembering all the good times and saying them aloud? I find it very cathartic for a lot of families to do something like that. And no pressure for you, but it's just something to consider, you know, sitting down and stating all the good times. It'll be emotional, it'll be hard, but at least you can have that one day a year that you can change into something a little bit more positive. What do you think about that?
You know, people ask me that, what are you going to do, you know, for Mike on his birthday? And I would say nothing.
Yeah.
I'm still grieving his death. To celebrate his life. And so this last November, I actually made myself a fried egg sandwich. It was one of Mike's favorites. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to eat that, you know. And so it was a start. And I put up a tree for the first time in 3 years. But I don't know if I could do all that yet, because the memories with Mike were so great but so painful.
Yeah.
And for me to do that, you're right, it will bring up all these emotions, and I still don't want to think about all that. It's
because then you have to accept it. Because then you have to accept it, right? And that's the hardest part.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and he was like my, you know, we had the same sick sense of humor. You know, like George Carlin. And
oh, sure.
I mean, my son, I would laugh till I almost peed my pants. I mean, he was so funny, but I can remember still him walking into the door, kissing me. I felt his beard on my face, you know, I could still smell him. And I think of that, you know, I think for me, it's still too painful for me to do that yet. And I think if I forced myself, I would be doing that for someone else.
Yeah, but it's almost a disservice for you. Like,
right. It would be like, okay, I'll do this for you because you think I should, but I really don't feel it. You know.
That's not to say maybe someday you will. Maybe someday you'll be able to do that, but just not right now.
Yeah, I still, you know, I still can't get myself to do that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's in your position, in your situation, what you've been through, what you're going through, what you've gone through. It makes perfect sense that you've got these feels and you're going through it every day. And it can be mind bending if you think about it. What? Let me ask you this, Jill. What would be one thing if Mike were still here? What would you say to him? What would you say to Mike if you could have just one more moment with him?
I would beg him, please, Mike, I know that you didn't want to get any help. He used to say the VA, forget them, it takes 5 weeks to get in. And the military teaches you to man up, trying to get help and take any medications for pussies. And I would tell him, you have to do this for us, if not for you. Because truly, I feel like he left me with a life sentence of pain. And I want him to know that he has to get himself help.
Yeah.
On
the flip side of things, I attempted in my life and I nearly died. And
God, I don't know how you did it.
No, and my father, all that you're going through, all that you've been through, and all the pain you're still in. I asked my father during the filming of our movie Suicide: The Ripple Effect, Dad, do you still fear my death by suicide? And he said to turn the camera off. And he said, Kevin, every time the phone rings.
Yep.
He didn't say when I called him. He said when the phone goes off in his pocket, his first and every thought is Kevin alive. Until today. Oh. It's been 20 years this September 25th since my attempt off the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm so glad to be alive. But it's been 20 years since my attempt September 25th off the Golden Gate Bridge. And my dad, when I call him, is always terrified that it's going to be my wife saying that his son is gone. And Jill, as much as I feel bad about that, my actions caused that. And our actions have a reaction.
Absolutely.
Equal or positive or negative reaction. And, I must say to you that I'm genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so sorry for your loss of Mike and for your family's loss. And I'm so grateful that you're on this platform sharing your story, because it's going to hit someone hard and it's maybe going to save a life. And you've already saved a life with your book or saved lives with your book and changed people's lives with your book, which is fantastic. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about the story and the journey of writing your book and what that was like, and tell us more about that?
Yeah, what I wanted to do was chronologically, I wrote out the start, like the text, and from there. And so I wanted people to understand the ride, what it was like, and what I did to stay alive, what I did to help myself. Because like I said, no one took me to a therapy. No one came with me. And, I want to help people and put them on a path that they don't have to do what I did, the researching and the, finding a therapist that wasn't the right one and not knowing why that wasn't the right one. Now I know what to do. So I wanted to lay it all out chronologically in my first, week, month, year, and beyond, what I did to help myself. And I go through signs of depression in children, because my son really was depressed from the age of 6. And what did we know 30 years ago? What did we know? Who would think a 6-year-old could be depressed?
Yeah.
So I tell that. And I also want people to understand that 1 in 4 people suffer with a mental disorder. You know someone right now that suffers with a mental disorder. And it's important that when you know or see those signs, please just reach out, even if it's a phone call, something. Do not walk away from that person, because you may next time be going to their funeral. Mm-hmm. And so I laid all that out, how I learned what I learned, where I went, what I did, my therapy, my medication. Not that I'm pushing medication, but for those that are open to it. I talk about Dwayne Johnson. I talk about J.K. Rowling's, people that have suicidal and they were, depression thoughts also. It's not just, they're not in a world that it doesn't affect them. It affects everybody.
Right, affects everybody.
You
No
know,
matter how successful you are in the world, it doesn't matter. I mean, look at like you said, you talk about Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
yep.
He has had a significant battle with depression, which he's very vocal about in his book. It was his book that helped save my life the first time I was suicidal.
Yeah.
I read that passage in his book that was signed by him,
Yeah.
and it helped me stay here.
Yeah.
And every time I go into a psych ward, I bring his book. My father would bring the book in the psych ward with me, and I would read that passage over and over again about defeating depression through faith and hard work. And you know, he's arguably the biggest film star in the world, and he goes through depression. So it doesn't. There's no discernment.
It doesn't discriminate.
No, it doesn't discriminate between any kind of person. It can anybody and everybody can go through these kinds of things. Absolutely.
And so, you know, I always say, don't look at what people look like on the outside or the house they live in or the car they drive. That does not mean they're not depressed.
Right.
And some people really put on a nice show, like Robin Williams, like my son. That was my son. And Robin Williams took his life 3 months before my son. And he was a major fan. I took him to see him at MGM Grand. So you see, all of that was just like piling on Mike. And that he took that real personal. It was almost like he knew him, you know. And
the world took that personally.
It was a shock.
Robin Williams was beloved by everyone.
Right.
Pardon me.
And so you say, what? How could you okay?
Yeah, I just got a frog in my throat. Pardon me.
So you want to say, my God, wait a minute. You okay?
Yeah, just
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you look at people like that, it's just such a front, you know, that they can put on, and you don't know.
You don't know.
So that's what my book is about, and trying to help people saving time by just getting right to the point of what they can do, where they could go, who they could call, and not have to go through everything I did.
No, absolutely. It's crucial that your book gets out there to the world. Can you tell us where to find your book and how we can read it?
Yeah, thank you. Well, my book is available right now on my website, aftermathofsuicide.com. There's the book tab at the top, and it will be available, I'm hoping, by September beginning. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, many bookstores.
Okay.
I can just kind of show you the picture. I don't know, can you see that?
Yep, we can see it right there.
Okay.
Overcoming a Life Destroyed by Jill DiArpino, and it's so crucial to read this book. It's a powerful story of you because you're going through it. You're going through this recovery journey right now into a new, you know, it's almost like you're going through a new life, right? Without Mike, and you gotta find a way to eventually accept this new reality, which is gonna be so hard for you, but not impossible. I don't think, you know. You'll never forget Mike and the beauty that he was in your life, and you'll always miss him for the rest of your existence. But you know, I certainly pray for you and pray for your family, and wish you the best in your journey. You know, because it is a journey. It's a journey from pain to moving forward.
Thank you. I also, you know, I'm a big advocate of mental illness. So I do Zoom speaking. If anybody is wanting to reach out to me, I do one-on-one. I'll do a small group, because when you have somebody that understands you and has been through it, there's nothing like that. Talking with somebody that can actually get what you're saying versus somebody with a PhD, let's say, and you're in therapy and they've never lost anybody with suicide. They don't have depression. They don't really quite understand that. And I found that to be true when I was, you know, moving around for the right therapist. And so, you know, being able to talk to somebody like myself can be, you know, really helpful. So my services are also available on my website under the services tab at the top. You know, I've got Instagram that I upload things there. I'll do a live. So, you know, anybody can reach out to me that has any questions. There also is a Ask Jill, any question that you'd like there on my website. And, I'm just here. I'm here to help people because I don't want anybody to go through how lost I felt, how abandoned I felt. And you don't even know where, I didn't even know where to start. I didn't even know where to go. And
well, the brightest piece of all this, as devastating as what you went through is, as you say, a life destroyed, you are now helping countless people recover and find hope. And if anything positive is going to come from this, it's what you're doing now. And there's something to be said about that. How important it is that, because you have this lived experience expertise that no psychologist is going to have, psychiatrist is going to have. And psychology and psychiatry are important, but let's remember the people that are going to move the needle forward are those that have been there. And so please, Jill, continue doing your amazing work. Keep writing, if you will. Share those works with the folks that need to hear it, and let's get your book out to the world, so people who've been there in situations like yours can find that glimmer of hope or that light at the end of the tunnel that they don't believe is there.
And if you notice, my logo is a wave. My logo on my website, it's a wave of a tsunami, because that's what hit me that day.
Yeah.
But through it, there is light at the end of sunlight, because there is light at the end of the tunnel for this, even though you don't see it in the beginning. And part of my proceeds of my book go to Wounded Warrior Project, which my son loved, as well as Tunnel to Towers. So I would appreciate, anybody that you think could benefit from this book, and we also can help those veterans as well. And Kevin, I've been wanting to ask you this. When you look at the Golden Gate Bridge, and I'm from the Bay Area and I've been there many times, I know how ominous that bridge is. When you look at that, what do you think?
I'm glad you asked that. People ask me that all the time, and it really is, it's, as you see in my background, it's behind me. I have no qualms looking at the Golden Gate Bridge. I have no issues going on the Golden Gate Bridge. I have found complete closure in what I did, in my actions. And I look at that bridge, and it's a beautiful bridge. I still believe that it is also, it has its own dichotomy. It's a beautiful bridge. The engineering feat it was to build that bridge is absolutely historical and phenomenal, but it is also a harbinger of death. It's a bridge. It is a bridge where one person dies there every 7 to 10 days and has for the last 50 years. It's a bridge where they'd like to tell you that 1,800 people have died there. It's more like 2,000 or 3,000 or higher. It's a bridge where 99% of those who have attempted never, ever get to tell their stories ever again. I got to live. Thank God I did. I'm grateful for every millisecond. And you know what? I'm even grateful to be able to go back to that bridge, look over where I jumped, and realize that I'm never going to do anything like that ever again.
That's great to hear. And I'm so happy.
Thank you, Jill.
In sharing your story. By the way, in my book, you are in my foreword.
Oh, wow. I'm so grateful, Jill.
Yeah, you actually started, I don't know how I came across your video, YouTube. And I thought, what? This guy survived this bridge? And I kept watching it over and over and over. And at the end, when you said the millisecond my hands left the rail, I had instant regret. And I thought, I'm sure everybody really, because most people don't really want to die.
No, they don't want to die.
The pain.
They believe they have to because the pain is so great.
Right.
It's not a want like you want to go get ice cream, or you want to go grab pizza, or you want to go out with your friends. It is a compulsion to die by your hands because you believe you are useless, worthless, and have no value, and you think you're a burden to those who still remain.
Amen.
And you don't want to die. You believe there's no other course of action, which is not true. And that's what I want to tell to our audience today, is that if you are out there and you are suicidal, stop. Breathe. Do 30 more deep resonance breaths. Take a moment to recognize that you are valued, you are loved, you are worthy. Suicide never has to be the solution to your problem. It is the problem, and you are 1,000 times greater than the worst thing you've ever done. And it is not the answer. let me tell you, the answer is turning to the person next to you and saying, I need help now. 4 simple but effective words.
Mhm.
And if the first person you find in front of you isn't willing to help you, you go to the next. And if the next person's not willing to help you, you go to the next until you find someone willing to empathize with your pain, because you deserve to be here until your natural end.
Absolutely. There's only one you.
There's only
No
one
one else
you.
can be you but you, right? People
Let's,
need you to stay alive.
yes. And Jill, let's talk about that for a minute, because let's think about all the people that pass on too early by suicide. What would their life have been? Let me tell you what I would have missed. Would have missed the love of my life, Margaret Hines, my best friend. Would have missed my father being the best man at my wedding. Would have missed the birth of my 2 god kids who I was there when they were being born. Would have missed thousands of interactions, meetings, of people I would have never met before that changed my life.
Mhm.
And so, you know, in 20 years, I can tell you that the best thing I ever did was survive that fall, and never attempt again. So I think, Jill, I want to let you have the last word. What would you say to someone out there in that kind of pain today to help keep them here?
Well, first of all, Kevin, thank you for the platform for me and for everything that you do. And I know it is a lifelong process when you have a mental illness. It doesn't just end, you take medicine and you're done and cured. What I'd like to say is, here's my number, 201-515-7100. If you ever need someone to talk to. Most strangers will understand you more than your own family, because sometimes, yeah, you think I'm a burden. They don't want to hear it. You just need attention. Please call me. Please keep the hotline number next to you, 911. And for anybody that's watching that has someone in their life that they know struggles, please reach out to them. Please save their life. I mean, you don't want to have to hear that they took their life. It's such a sickening feeling. Your stomach just drops, and it's devastating.
So guys, you can call the Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Soon to be a 988 number. You can text CNQR to 74174 on the crisis text line. If you're international, you can go to suicide.org to find the best services for you. Please be here tomorrow and every day after that. We love you. We want you to stay. Jill, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. All right, Jill, take care.
Everybody,
talk to you.
Your life is worth it.
Your life is worth it. We need you, and we promise.
Don't you dare take your life.
No, don't you dare. Be well. Be here tomorrow, and we'll talk to you soon. This was the Mental Health Marvels podcast with Jill Derapino. We're so grateful to have her on. Take care. Bye, Jill.
Bye. Thank you.